Okay, so there's me and Ozzy Osbourne. SEO has been my life for 21 years. Click. All right, so I'm the CEO and founder of Internet Marketing Ninjas. We've had between 40 and 45 employees for the past six years. I'll just give my little finger wags here. All right, so if you're wondering about the breakdown of our team, we have a service staff of 30. We have lots of content marketers. That's a fancy name for link builders. 6 brand asset people, 4 analysts, a handful of content writers, reputation, and a support staff. All right, so you guys all know this. You know, SEO means ranking higher in the SERPs. And you know, your site can have the most amazing content that's in the world and the most amazing user experience compared to all your competitors. But without good backlinks, your chance of ranking in Google is pretty darn slim. In fact, there's even been studies about that, you know. All right, next. So if we look at some of the major ranking factors, it kind of is broken down into 4 areas. There's content, there's links, there's usability, there's some technical aspects, but links tends to be the biggest aspect. So if we look about top 10 ranking factors, you know, there's links, we're looking at the quality, the expertise, the authority, the anchor text. Content, you know, the keywords, the relevance, the accuracy, the trust. User experience, is it query relevant, pogo sticking, mobile friendly? And the technical, load time, mobile, etc. So links are often the biggest key to rankings. And ever since Google's algorithm came out, you know, the anatomy of a large-scale hypertextual search engines, links have been the core of Google. But it's a minefield, link building. And you don't want to end up like that guy. And we're going to kind of dive deep into link building a little bit, but try not to get eaten by the shark when you go deep, because it can be dangerous. So these days, I'm really amazed by 2 main things when it comes to link building. Those that ignore link building, they think, hey, we'll just write great content and it's going to attract natural backlinks. And there's some people that are just too scared to build backlinks. You know, they know it's dangerous and they're like, well, I don't want to do anything to get backlinks because I might get in trouble. And so they just ignore the fact that backlinks is one of the biggest part of Google's algorithm. That's one of the things that surprises me. And then the other things that surprises me is the people that buy links from databases. We're going to talk about that a little bit more, but, you know, they go somewhere and they're like, hey, you know, I'm a finance site or an education site or a car site or whatever. And someone says, hey, I've got a spreadsheet of a whole bunch of links and that are in this network, and I can give you a whole bunch of blog links from these sites that are related. And all those come from spreadsheets that can be mapped. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later. And here's what those spreadsheets look like. You know, here's a list of URLs, here's their category, here's their domain authority, page authorities, all that stuff. Spreadsheets not good. We'll talk more about this. But I should let you know, when doing link building for 21 years, I'm no angel. I've been around the block, and so, you know, I don't want to throw rocks in a glass house. In fact, my house, this was built by one of my employees. My house has been built on links, my house, my business. You know, it started out with link trading years ago. And pyramid linking strategies is an interview I did with Barry Schwartz back in 2004. And then I used to buy a lot of links on, you know, PageRank 7, 8, 9, until November 7th, 2003, when my house crashed. Basically, I was told by Google, thou shalt not buy links. And so I had to rebuild the house. Then I bought links that were under the radar until November 13th, 2008. You know, I thought I was so clever. I'm getting links under the radar. Google's not going to know. In fact, we were doing so good at building links between us. I think this is more than 10 years old, so hopefully the statute of limitations is over. But Google was actually paying us to build links. We were working with a company called Performix. Google bought them, and for a while, Google was paying us to build links to some sites. All right, long ago. And then again, the house crumbled again in November of 2008. And, you know, I had to come out with a blog post saying paid links aren't worth it to me. I basically had to do that or Google wouldn't let my sites out of penalty. I had to kind of be the poster child in 2008 that, you know, I used to say building links is great and building links that are under the radar, you know, there's ways to do that. And Google kind of made me a poster child of thou shalt not do that, unfortunately. So, you know, after that day, I was kind of done buying links. It's kind of like, all right, you know, I can't play this game anymore. The house keeps crashing. I got to figure out how do I get backlinks and not get penalized from Google, because I'm always paranoid that Google is looking at what I'm doing. But I'm not alone in getting busted for buying links. You know, I've certainly been busted back in 08 for buying links. Google itself has been caught buying links as well. Here's one that was written about in 2009. Google again caught buying links in 2012. It's kind of a quote from Danny Sullivan. What is it that they were doing? Danny Sullivan thinks it's X company paid bloggers. They paid bloggers with an Amazon give certificate to write sponsored posts on Google Chrome. And that's against guidelines. Now, this is Google, and there's some people that are working at Google that don't know thou shalt not do that. And if Google itself doesn't know, I worry about other webmasters that think, you know, this stuff is okay. And Google had to say it's not okay, and they penalize themselves. Click. Click, click. All right. 2018, again from Barry Schwartz. Google caught buying links. There are going to be lots of clicks here. Just click, click, click. All right. So basically, Google again being busted. On the flip side, Google can and also has gone after link sellers. And what they do is they'll stop PageRank from passing on sites. They've done this for years. There used to be a site called Blocked PR that used to list all the sites that no longer pass PageRank or power over. And it still goes on to this day. You know, there's people that, everyone gets those emails, get in this popular place or that popular place, you know, Forbank, all of that stuff. And how do I say, Google has blocked those sites from passing PageRank for years. People just, I guess, don't know it. They don't know sites don't pass PageRank if they're suspected of selling links. And we'll keep going here. So Google again just says that that if you're selling links, there are some other things that can happen. And this is still long ago, but it's still true. Google still doesn't pass power from sites. Google came out with Penguin. It was really, there are certain dates where, because links is one of the biggest part of Google's algorithm, a lot of what Google tries to do is find links that appear to be artificial within the map of the web. And a lot of it is either not counting that or penalizing sites that fit patterns that appear to be unnatural. And so Google did a lot of these Penguin updates back in 2012, 13, 14, going into 2016, and then they kind of rolled it into the algorithm. Next. Okay, so Penguin is now part of the core algorithm. Next. All right, so it's interesting now that Penguin's rolled into the main algorithm. It often can just affect things at a page level or a keyword level or a folder level. So I know that Google for years used to say, you shouldn't focus on your keyword rankings, but if you have a history of doing SEO, you should follow, your rankings on pages and folders. And if there's a hit to it, you may want to look at the backlinks that are going to that page. Now, could be one of a couple things. It could be those links that you have to that page once counted and now they don't. Or it could be that there's something holding you back. Of course, if you have a manual penalty, that's where you're going to want to look as well first. All right. So yeah, this is John Mueller, and he says that with regard to devaluing these low quality links, instead of punishing you in general, we try and figure out what are the spammy tactics that are happening. We'll say, well, we'll just try and ignore that part. A lot of people see droppings and they think it's a penalty, especially if they've been doing a lot of SEO link building throughout the years. And often the drops are just links that may have counted one day have been mapped and they no longer count. So Penguin's now part of the core algorithm. And it's real-time regular rather than regular refreshes the way that it used to be. And it's no longer a site-wide issue. It could be, but often it's a page or a folder issue. So yeah, like I said, watching your keywords on rankings and pages and folders and specific keyword phrases is really important now. So, there's the white hat and the black hat, and I've been to a lot of conferences, and, a lot of people come up to me and they're like, hey, we want white hat link building. All right, click. And then they follow it up with, here's the 5 phrases that we're targeting. And then they say, we need at least X amount of links per month, and make sure the domains at least have a domain authority of X, and make sure they all come from pages about X topic, and make sure the anchor text is, blue widgets or a mix of other commercial phrase. And we need to get links to these commercial pages. And, sometimes they'll come to us and they'll be like, we already got the low hanging fruit. And I'm like, well, what is the low hanging fruit? And they're like, well, we submitted to lots of directories and article syndication sites, guest blog posts, forum links, paid blog reviews, hired some link builders, purchased some private blog network links. And that's kind of what that fruit looks like to me. And I know why. It's because the bosses come to you and they're like, we need to be #1 for this phrase or you're fired. The boss looks at his rankings every single morning. Got to keep moving. That's what they're hearing. So everyone bought guest blog posts on guest blog post sites that are taken from an inventory of sites that are used to sell guest blog posts. But people buy it because they can go to their boss and be like, hey, we're a car website, and we found these car bloggers, and they wrote a story about, cars, and they gave us some anchor text going to our site, and the boss looks at us, it's a great car blogger, an anchor text link going to our money page, and this looks really good. But the problem is that stuff can be mapped. We'll talk about that a little bit more. If we look at this page here, it's kind of funny, sites that, sell links and, placement is always guaranteed. Here's, just some place out there that says, we guarantee that we can get you these placements. So here's from John Mueller. Sent your recent tweet with SEMrush would be good to totally clarify, as there now seems to be lots of confusion. We all know paying for guest blog posts is against the guidelines, but what about guest posts in general where no money changes hands? So Mark is asking John Mueller. Here's John's response. He says that part is problematic. The part that's problematic is the links. If you're providing the content links, then those links shouldn't be passing signals and should have the rel sponsored, rel no follow attached. It's fine to see it as a way of reaching a broader audience. Not sure if everyone knows this or sees this. Google often is not a fan of guest blog posts. And here's an engineer from Google, maybe, and he's kind of mapping your links. We'll talk a little bit about that here. All right, so here's the dreaded email. Hey, webmasters, You know, it appears as if you've been buying links. That's the email you don't want to get. So how do you measure the links you have? That's one of the biggest things. I know we're going to talk about link building, but measuring the links is so crucial to this. How do you measure? And how do you get links that you don't have to worry about? So let's talk about measuring links for a disavow. And again, Google puts a big warning on that tool when you're analyzing links for disavow. You can cause a lot of harm to your site, and they have these big warnings. But beyond that, so Marie Haynes asked Gary Ilias, she says, how often do site owners disavow links that hurt them? And Gary's response was, it's often enough that if it were me, and this is a guy who works at Google, that I would remove the disavow tool. If you don't know what you're doing, you can shoot yourself in the foot. And that's a quote from Gary Ilias at Google. So it's a Google rep. But there's another thing that potentially, if you do it right, there could be some benefits. So disavowing bad links may help Google algorithmically trust your links. And that's from this. So Marie Haynes asked John Mueller, is there any way that looks to say if we didn't get a manual action or they didn't get a manual action that those links hurt them algorithmically, because we feel we're seeing some improvements in some sites after disavowing? And John says that can definitely be the case. So sometimes where our algorithms, they look at it and they say, see that, oh, there's a bunch of really bad links here, then maybe they'll be a bit more cautious in regards to links in general from the website. So if you clean that up in the algorithm, look at it and say, oh, these are kind of okay, it's not that bad. So there's could be a potential that in doing a disavow, you could help your rankings, but unfortunately most people do, I believe, and so does Gary, that most people do the disavow wrong and they ended up hurting themselves more. And the problem is people think they know how to measure a link. They use like Moz Trust, Ahrefs Trust, Majestic Trust, Toxic Links, Ugh. So what do you use to find your backlinks? You use Moz, you use Majestic, Ahrefs, Google Webmaster Search Console backlinks. So one of our internal tools, we grab the data from Moz, Ahrefs, Majestic, SEO Kicks. We can kind of look at the backlinks to a site using all those. And I know you can't kind of read those, but these are a list of backlinks and what one of those resources found those backlinks. You can kind of see the X's over on the right hand side. So it's kind of backlinks and which place found them. And a lot of the more popular ones, all the places found them. But if you kind of go down the page a little bit on the tool, click, you'll see that, you know, Moz knows of some links, Majestic knows of others, Ahrefs knows of others that the others don't know about. They all kind of have, you know, if there's the web of the internet, you know, there's a large part that Google knows. There's a large part of that they've kind of thrown out. But when you look at, you know, Moz, Majestic, and Ahrefs, they all have a little slice of the internet. And some of it overlaps with the others and some doesn't. And if you're looking at just one of those and thinking this is the complete picture, it's not. So, you know, we heard from Tyson earlier today from Search Metrics. Great talk. I love analyzing data. But Marcus Tober from Search Metrics, one point did a post, talked about in a talk that 89% of sites that ranked 7 years ago no longer rank today. And it's interesting. So I had a talk with Marcus as well, and I said, well, how did you come up with that? And they basically grabbed 7 years worth of data. They looked at all the sites that ranked 7 years ago. They looked at how many of those sites ranked today, and only 11% were left. Now, you know, what happened to those sites? Did they, you know, some may have just gone away, some might have been redirected elsewhere, but a lot of the sites have been penalized in Google. They used to rank for phrases and now they don't. And, let's talk a little bit about, Mazda, Majestic, and Ahrefs. They have their, domain value and page value. And I'm so glad that Barry Schwartz was asked that question this morning too about domain authority and what are his thoughts on domain authority. And, Barry basically said, yeah, it's an interesting metric, but it's not what Google uses. And there are lots of flaws with it. And I'll show you a few of the flaws of using it. So here's kind of a list of websites, and we're showing, the number of backlinks going into these websites. And I pulled one of them out of here. So one of these sites, there's, outsourced to Philippines. It's a backlinks to someone's website. And I see, wow, there's 3,400 domain backlinks in that 38 keywords that rank in the top 100, but it's only worth $17 a month, according to SEMrush. Luis kind of mentioned earlier, looks at traffic levels. One of the things to look at if a site is potentially safe is it getting traffic? If a site's getting traffic, it probably isn't penalized by Google. One of the metrics I look very similar to that is just the value from SEMrush, and that value is based on does that page or site rank for phrases? How high does it rank? What's the search volume, average cost per click, things like that. Yeah, and if you look at the site, you can see that, yep, this site used to once rank for a whole bunch of phrases, and then it got flatlined by Google. Here's kind of another one. I know you can't see that site, but underneath here, it's this site here. It's this site has 1,658 domain backlinks. 2010, it was worth $1,566 a month. 2012, 87. Today, it's worth $0. Another site that's flatlined. But if you look at, the domain and page authority on Moz, Majestic, or Ahrefs, they all look good. If you were looking at their things, you'd be like, I'd like to get a link from this site. But it's like, site doesn't rank for anything. Site's been penalized for years. Like, no value here. So here's another one. There's another site. There's one more example, and I see, it's got 4,595 unique domain backlinks to it. And if you look at those Moz, Majestic, and Ahrefs page and domain authority for these backlinks, you'd be like, wow, those are really great. I'd love to get a link from one of those. But the SEMrush value is only $1 today, and it's like, I saw that and I'm like, this sounds familiar, but I went to the website. I'm like, all right, I recognize that. And I kind of go to the next page. And I look and I'm like, oh yeah, here's all the people that are buying links on here. I don't know what happened after August. I went here again last night. I don't know if the guy died or what, but he was selling links right up till August on this page. And I'm like, this kind of looks familiar. And I scroll way down the page. And I'm like, oh yeah, I found that site back in December of 2002. And I think like it stopped passing PageRank December of 2003. So it's like people are still buying this, but talk about a red flag and something that's not passing PageRank. Again, a lot of people would look at these numbers and be like, I'd love to get on that site. And it's like, no, it doesn't rank. As well, there's no traffic. And again, that 89% of sites that ranked 7 years ago aren't ranking today. And, Moz, Majestic, and Ahrefs often in their scores aren't taking things like this into account. So I don't believe in any tool for link measurements, not any page authority, domain authorities, no toxic link scores. So this is something I just added the past hour. I haven't showed this stuff off before, but I figured I would show. This is it's a private internal link tool that we've built. And if you go to the next slide, I'll show you something that I circled here, the link sellers. So when I go to analyze links, one of the things that I look at when I'm analyzing someone's backlink profile is, do you have links from known sellers? Hey, here's kind of another tool where I can throw in someone's backlinks and go in and look to see if, now let me go, we're going to go forward a slide. So I don't know, you might not be able to read this. I kind of blacked out some names. But what I've done is this, and I hope I don't get anyone out there upset. Anyone that writes to me and says, hey, Jim, I've got a bunch of sites you can get links from. I say, great, send me over the spreadsheet. I take that spreadsheet, I upload it to this tool. Anyone that's selling links out there, I say, hey, I got a finance site or whatever, can you give me some links? And they show me some links and I upload it to this tool. From this tool, I've been able to map out their networks as well as the link buyers. So let's go, well, we'll go ahead here. And when I say we've mapped out their networks, I can kind of show you, this is kind of an example of mapping them out. So when I look at someone's backlinks, I can look at known backlinks that they have from known sellers. Like, here's someone's got 3,000 backlinks, and here are known backlinks and sellers networks. And then we have another section called suspected link sellers. Oops, let's go back to that last slide if you can. So on here, the site on the left-hand side, it's a backlink to someone's site, to a client. And it's listed as a suspected link seller. And someone might be, Jim, why do you suspect that that's a link seller? Well, the right-hand side of that chart is all sites that we know are selling links within that network. And those sites link out to the sites that are in the middle. And that site on the left-hand side also links out to the site in the middle. And if I blocked out the sites because I don't want to get anyone upset or whatever, but if you looked at it, you'd be like, oh yeah, the site on the left, which links to you, it's a suspected link seller of that network, and it is. It's in that network. All right, so we'll go forward. And here's another scary thing that I can do for every network of companies that sell links. I also have a map out of what are the top 1,000 suspected buyers within those networks. We also track their SEMrush value on a monthly basis, and we get alerts when they drop in value by more than, I think it's 30% on any month. So we can also watch when people are affected by things, which is interesting. All right, next. All right, so before I kind of move into this next section, I really got to talk about that link stuff. A lot of people, when they're analyzing backlinks, they're looking at that domain authority and trying to decide, hey, this is good, or they're using some tool that says this is toxic, or it's not, or it's good. And there's a lot of problems with that. And a lot of people can do a link analysis, and sure, you can find stuff on duplicate IPs and duplicate content and, that stuff, which, I'm sure Google already knows about that. But what is Google really looking at when they're analyzing backlinks? I think what they're looking at is something like what I've got, is this site selling links? And there was a slide we kind of passed through back there, but I run a site through, it can tell me what are the known links within each network and what are the suspected links. And anyone is going to have, every site out there is going to have links from suspected buyers. It just happens. Yeah, this one right here. Yeah. So like all sites, no matter what, kind of like scrapers, you're going to have links from people that sell links. It's going to happen. But when it sticks out, like this one here, here's some backlink run, and the guy has 362 known links from this particular person. It's when they stick out, and it's like, oh yeah, you don't get that many links from one of the buyer's sites by accident. Like sometimes you get to go through it, it sticks out. And I 100% believe that's what Google's looking at. And the problem is when people are looking at links and analyzing links for what's good or bad, they're not thinking along that way of, is this a link in some network that's getting mapped? This person who's selling me links, are they going to the next car guy? Are they going to the next guy? Are they going to the next guy? Like, are they just selling to the same people? And any one of those people that it gets under Google's magnifying glass and they start to map out the network, are you going to be in that network? Are you getting stuff? And I know why people get it. They want to be number one. They go to their boss. Here's this relevant blog post from this car blogger. And everyone's like, hey, this is great. And they don't realize that that site is part of a network and they're mapping themselves out with people that can be penalized. Either they're going to wipe out that network or they're going to penalize all the suspected buyers. And it's clear when someone's buying. I can see it. If I can see it, Google can see it. All right, so let's move on to methods for getting some trusted links. All right. So there's broken link building. We'll talk about that in a second. There is trust bait link building. We'll talk about that real quick. There is competitor link building. We'll talk about that real quick. And there's brand asset link buildings. We're going to talk about those really quick. So get ready on the finger to keep pressing buttons because I still got a whole bunch of slides here. So broken link building. Let's move on here. Okay, so here I am. I'm on this web page, and you know, there's what's the word? There's things you can get that tell you if there's a broken link on a page. I'm forgetting the type of word, but there's also other tools. So I'm on this web page, and I notice that link on the bottom. It's got the red arrow to it to 404. You know, and I'm on some edu page here. And I'm like, all right, this edu page, there's a broken link on it. So with that being said, I can go back into the Wayback Machine and see what that link used to be. Hey, they're linking to some page which is dead, and I look and I'm like, all right, that's what the page used to be. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my writer and I'm going to say, hey, here's a link to the Wayback Machine. I want you to write something similar to this, but make it better and cite some more resources. And then what we do is we tell the client, hey, publish this educational paper on your website. And then we go to that, you know, that college guy and we say, hey, I was researching this particular thing. I came across your webpage. I see you got this broken link. Hey, I found this other really cool link about that topic that I think you should fix your broken link with, and have a great day. And hopefully they say, okay, yes. Now, let's go back to that page. And I say, all right, there's that edu page and it's linking to that broken link down there. And I've already seen what the page was. And hey, if this edu page is linking to that broken link, I wonder if there's other pages that link to that page that used to be there. So I look and I say, wow, there's 200 other sites linking to that page that's a broken link that edu page is linking to. So what I do is I start writing to everyone. Hey, you got a broken link on your page. It goes to here, doesn't seem to work. Here's another one. So I write to Professor Larry and I write to Professor Mo and Professor Curley. And all right, so let's move on to trusted link building, the next one. All right, so trusted link building. So here's an example. We had a client who does website design and programs. So we created a page that was something like 98 resources to build your own website. And you probably can't read this because it's really small, but this got a whole bunch of links from libraries and EDUs and some really fun stuff because we wrote to them and said, hey, you got a page about this topic and, you know, this is great. And you got some really cool resources. And man, I found this other really cool resource. It got 98 things on it and it was a big help. I think you should add it to your page. Okay, so here's part of how you can do that. So let's say, I don't know, I think one of the examples there was like, let's say you've got a car part website. And so, you know, I think that article that I found that was the broken link was some page about Henry Ford. And I'm like, all right, car part site, Henry Ford, this is great. So another way that you can find sites is you might search for things in Google like, I don't know, quote, Henry Ford, space, history, biography, Model T or something. You run some search phrases and then kind of grab all the results. And then and when we're doing this type of link building, I don't write to bloggers. Why? I don't trust bloggers. I'm looking for old sites that are non-bloggers that were put on the web to make the web a better place. And I just honestly don't trust bloggers. So we kind of pull down the results and then we look for pages that already have a bunch of other links to that resource. You know, is there other pages that have a bunch of links to Henry Ford biography stuff? So we're going to take those and we're going to send an email. Hey, I was researching this, came across your great page. Hey, I found this other really cool page that I think you should add to your site. And you can do that to a lot of people. Competitor link harvesting. Now you got to be careful with this because your competitor may have link bombs. You know, they may have really bad links. Maybe they got penalized. Maybe all that stuff is in their disavow file and you don't know. And so you go harvesting their backlinks and you're like, hey, this is great. You know, you got to be real careful. So here's some ways on how to do it. You want to identify 3 to 10 of your competitors. You want to download their backlinks. Moz, Majestic, Ahrefs are good places to do that from. And essentially you kind of want to do a disavow. You know, here's good, here's bad. I'd pull out all the blog stuff, forum stuff, newspaper stuff, and kind of see what's left that you might be able to get the backlink from. You can do categories, blogs, forum, news articles, resources, and then you can make a list of the sites that you think you might be able to get on. And then in a perfect world, you want to get on that same link that links to your competitor. That's kind of the perfect world. That'd be really good co-citation. But if you can't get a link on that page that links to your competitor, then the second best place is to get a link anywhere on that site. Okay, the next story, brand assets. How are we doing for time? All right, we're going to rock and roll here. Create brand assets for links. So here's kind of another thing that we do a lot for creating links. All right, so some examples. This is an interactive infographic. It's really cool. I think it's about birds. You can click on it. The birds do things. It's super cool. This particular one, let's see, 5 months after releasing it, it's kind of funny. It's kind of funny. Not everything this is stuff that we create to kind of go viral. It's a little bit different than that educational bait. This is stuff that we want to spread across the web. They're what we call brand assets. And sometimes things can go viral like at the beginning. Sometimes things never go viral. And sometimes things go viral later. This particular one, I think month 5, it got over 1 million visits to that particular page. And then the line below that is the total referring domains. It's up to 746 links to that. None of those links did we ask for. Let me repeat that. None of those links did we ask for. They all came naturally, so to speak. We're marketing it. We're trying to get this stuff in front of as many eyes as possible. And I know I'm going to jump into one of my other slides, but you're like, well, how do you market them? All right, there's going to be social things. You're going to market on social. There's the right tagging. We're going to submit things to Reddit, their popular categories, possibly Mix, which used to be Stumbled Upon. We're going to submit to, depending on what it is, I think that was like an infographic. We're going to submit to some infographic stuff. If it's relevant to a news topic, especially if it's a location based, then we'll write to journalists and be like, hey, see you cover whatever, did you see this? And sometimes we're not even sending them right to the client link. Like if someone else writes about it, it might be like, hey, saw you cover whatever, do you see this article over here? So it doesn't look like you're trying to promote that. And wait. But this is through spreading. This is a thing, just spread. All right, next slide. 246 unique dim backlinks. That's beautiful. Next. Yeah, month 5, over 1 million visits, like crazy. And, let's talk a little bit about referral stuff for a second. You may be like, hey, I don't know what that guy sold, but it was a bird thing. But one of the interesting things to think about is your referral traffic. A lot of people don't even think about this. If all of your traffic is from Google, it basically says people can, you're good at SEO. That's what it says. You're good at SEO. If all that you're found on is Google, great. You're good at SEO. And that tells Google that. But it also tells Google, why aren't you getting visits from other sites? And that could very well be a signal if you're getting referral traffic from other sites. If you're 90% traffic from Google and your referral traffic is 2%, that tells Google you're really not popular on the web. All right, now here's another one we did. All sorts of traffic, all sorts of backlinks. Here's another one we did. I grabbed one client that we did a bunch of brand assets for, and I just said, let's just look at how many links they got, because a lot of times people come to us and they want links, and so we do the brand asset. We used to do these fancy reports. Here's how much traffic it got. Here's all these other signals. Here's who tweeted it, retweeted it, blah, blah, blah. And in the end, they would always be like, that's cool, but how many links did it get? All right, so now our whole shift, an internal bonus is how many links did it get. But I took this one client, it's just click, and we'll fill in these 3 fields. So I looked at how many backlinks. So it was something like 8. So these are all number of backlinks that their brand assets got. And I just wanted to look, what's kind of the average. They're averaging 42 links. Some got 10, some got 246. It's kind of like, not everything you create is going to go viral. We always hope everything we create is going to go viral, but everything is not. But when something goes viral and, suddenly a site goes offline because there's so much traffic or whatever, like, hey, that's great. We love that. All right, next. Okay, Chip talked about that. All sorts of wonderful things, a whole bunch of good backlinks. We'll do next. Here's some other examples, getting links from Huffington Post, BuzzFeed, Distractified, Board Panda. And a lot of these sites just found it from being on other places. Okay, we'll keep going. We even had one, George Takai, has actually shared 2 of ours. That's fun. I'm an SEO. I'm a link builder. And if you ask like, hey, how much does SEO play in the equation? Hardly any. But if it spreads through social, then some people might write about it. And that's kind of the goal. All right, next, here's another one. I think we just got some examples. We can flip through here quick. Yep, that did great. Yep. 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 Yeah, so advertising on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Google, Reddit, Mix, others. Oh, and here we are at the end. So now go forth, create great content, and then promote it to the right eyes. And then you get one more click there. All right, stay away from spreadsheets. They can be mapped. All right, guys, sorry I couldn't do my own clicking on that, but thank you, everyone. Thank you, Cody and Philip, especially for inviting me here. Cassandra, I think, is kind of behind the scenes there. Thank you, Cassandra. Barry and Luis and Tyson did awesome this morning. Great to be in on that. And we got Matthew and Kevin coming later, so I'm excited about that. But thank you all.
Great, thank you, Jim. I hope I tried to keep up with your slides.
But sorry about that. You did really good.
We made it work. No big deal. So I think, Philip, I don't know if I was monitoring the slides, so I don't know what was going on.
Right. We don't have too much time left. I think I have about 100 questions for you, Jim. So I'm just going to ask a few of them. Before I ask any, though, I do want to mention, Jim, I think you're up to 93 free SEO tools on your website. Maybe you can just tell people, where to find it, what kind of tools are there, maybe what is the most popular tool. What I'd really be interested in is which tool has the most links to it.
Well, that's for ninjas, one of our best ways to get links has been building tools. Yeah, we've got the blog, and Ann Smarty often blogs, and I love that. But the tools is something that we can build, and just over the course of years, they pick up free links. If you go to internetmarketingninjas.com, I think in the top menu bar there's a link for tools, and there's I think free and paid. The free is pretty cool. I mean, almost everything on there. It depends on what you're into. There's SEO tools, there's design tools. There's nothing in there super fancy that's going to be earth shattering. They're free. But there's some really cool tools. If you look through them, you may be like, oh, I never knew that something like this existed. I think I'll bookmark that one, or better yet, link to it. Maybe you could do a blog post about it. Hey, here's a really neat tool.
All right, well, let me start. Yeah, we don't have too much time. Let me start with a few questions. I think for people who've been in the SEO world for a while, right, there's kind of the rise and fall and maybe rise again of guest post blogging. Could you talk about, you didn't mention that, right? And Luis didn't mention that either. I'm just curious, like, clearly you made it very clear you shouldn't be buying links, but what about that outreach where you say, hey, I'd love to do a guest post on your blog, and maybe you can do a guest post on my blog?
Sure. My theory, and it's only a theory, is that there's certain words that I think Google may look at if they appear on a page, and they may not count the external links on that page. If the word sponsor is on a page, if the word guest is on a page, potentially if the word scholarship is on the page. I know scholarship link building was so huge for so many years. Every conference I went to, whoever talked about link building, it'd be like scholarship links. And, for the past few years, I used to have a couple slides about, let's talk about scholarship links. And I'd pull up pages where there was like payday loan scholarships, gambling scholarships. And I'm like, this has been so over abused that I don't think Google would ever hurt you for them, but they may not count them. And I don't know. And that's the same with the guest blog posts. I mean, there's certainly real sites that, accept a guest blog post that are great and of a really high value. the problem is, you know, they're 1%. To be 99% of the guest blog posts, that's all they're set up for. You know how there used to be made for AdSense sites, now there's made for blog post sites. You know, I guess if it's a real site, then definitely, even for the branding and to capture that audience, like I would never be like, you know, there's a real site, I would never be like, I'm not going to do a guest blog post. You know, certainly, you know, if Search Engine Land said, hey, we want you to do a guest blog post, I'd be like, I'm there. You know, right. I know it's a real site, I know it's my audience, I'd definitely. But if Joe Schmo or whatever says, you know, that you get that mass email, you know, that says, I've got a bunch of sites where we can get you blog posts from. And then it's like, those, no.
Right. Let me ask you about no follow, because I think that's been sort of interesting too, right? So now I guess you know this stuff better than me, but the latest advice is no follow actually could have some value, right? So people used to be so particular of going back to guest blog posting or whatever. Hey, you know, make sure it's not a no follow link, and then Google says, well, we do kind of look at those. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. You know, for years, I pretty much felt that if a link was no followed, there's no value in it. Not to say that there's any negative value, but some people would be like, you should make sure at least 20% of your links are no followed or something. And I'd be like, nah. But now Google's changed it where they say now we may count those links, follow those links, whereas before they didn't. Now, how often? So I guess the next question is, could no follow links count now? Some may, and I don't think anyone specifically knows, you know, do links from the Wikipedia count now? You know, they may. If there's a great newspaper that, you know, 10 years ago, someone there, you know, heard about some Google stuff and said, we need to no follow every single link in our newspaper. And Google sees 100% of the links out from this site are no follow, they may ignore that. But I think the person who's getting any, I don't want to say a, you know, level C site, you know, right. Link or something that's no followed, I don't think Google's going to start following it now. You know, you know, if it's just some junky link on a no traffic place and you think there's going to be a value now that Google's following links, I don't think there is. I don't think anyone, when Google said, you know, we're going to start to count those, I never saw some big update or anything. It was like, whoa, like everything changed now. Google must be really following all those no followed. So yeah, and I'm never one to volunteer. You know, if I had sites, I would never put the word sponsor on there. You know, I would just say no follow. I know Google's like, help us to identify sponsored links. And it's like, no, like, why would I do that?
Right, I agree. That seemed like a strange request. All right, Cody, do you have time for one more, or should we move on to the polls?
If it's short, one more. We're kind of running close to the end here.
All right, Jim. You know, one of the things that was a little surprising to me, probably shouldn't be, but that, you know, disavowing, right, is still a thing. I totally, you know, when Penguin came, obviously disavowing was maybe the only thing or the number one thing, but we're now what 6, 7, 8 years that, you know, later, and you see this much more than we do at Textbroker. Is that still a thing? Are there people who have these huge issues and they have to do major disavowing?
Kind of. You know, usually when a new client comes to us, one of the first things I do is analyze the backlinks. And usually what I'll start with is I'll look at the current disavow. 2/3 of the time when I look at the current disavow, I go, oh my God. You know, for years, a lot of people that did disavows, they went in there and stripped out anything. A lot of people that are super white hat and they're like, when in doubt, I'm disavowing it, you know, and they wipe out like 90% of someone's links. And you know, and even people that got it, you know, you can search on Google for like, you know, manual penalty or disavow links. Stuff. And there's a lot of people that shout out, we're 98% successful, 97%. They all brag about it. And I know what's happening. They're disavowing everything. Submitting it to Google. The person at Google is looking at it going like, oh, you just, sure, you're forgiven. You know, you get out tomorrow, like you just disavowed everything. All right, you're out. You know, and they're like, hey, we got you out of penalty. And the client's like, hey, we're out of penalty. And then, you know, 6 months go by and they're like, why is their traffic just continuing to go down? And it's like you wiped out all your backlinks. So one of the first things that I do, you know, with a new client is let's look at your current disavow. because often I find there's a lot of stuff in there that should not be in there. That's the first thing. And then
So what happens when you find that? So you get rid of the disavow?
I'll remove them from the disavow.
Remove it, okay.
Or I can upload it and then I can check on stuff to remove from the disavow.
Got it.
And then I'll go. So after I've done that, which is instantly, it's like, hey, I just gained you a whole bunch of backlinks back. And then I guess the next thing is looking at their links. And I think, to me, anyone that's analyzing backlinks, I think that my tool where I'm analyzing the sellers is what Google's using. And I think anyone else using stuff, they're either finding stuff like, oh, I disavowed the Globe network or whatever, like some common stuff, or all the stuff on the same IP. It's like, hey, Google already knows that. What they're looking for is, are you in any paid link network? And so anytime I'm doing a disavow, I'm really conservative. I'm not out there to remove links. They're really hard to get. And if someone doesn't have a penalty, especially, I'm going to be incredibly conservative. And all that I'm really going to do is I'm going to look at what are the paid links or suspected paid links, and I'm going to remove the lowest value stuff of that if there's no issue. And so the thought is now you can sleep a little bit better at night because your odds of getting caught up in some filter are going to be a lot less. And that's not to say like I'm going to remove every known paid link, but if there's a list of 250 paid links that I know are paid and there's no penalty, and I look at the value of all those sites, probably the bottom 100 have zero value. I'm be like, I'm going to wipe out these bottom 100. Now you have half, you haven't been penalized yet. Now you have half as many. You should be able to sleep a lot better at night. So I guess that's more the disavow. I don't want anyone ever to get caught up in a penalty, and it's usually around, are you buying links?
Got it. Okay.